So I showed you yesterday a brain where they dissected out all the gray matter and left all the white matter. This is how it looks like if you use this modern technology using diffusion tensor imaging and combining the data from that with a 3D printer. So get you this model over here. So these are all the axons that we were talking about from yesterday. So take away the neuronal cell bodies, this is what you see. So very complicated. Just remember that this is all about information, communication, no? Between neurons. Simple as that, but very complicated as to where they go and where they come from. So we simplify things by looking at where the destination is. Now, if your destination is from the brain to your extremities, so OS203, OS204, 205, 206. So connecting the rest of the brain, you must project. So you have to project going out of you, going outwards. No? So that those are projection fibers. So hopefully it will be tackled or maybe not tackled. The higher learning that you will miss out on is that the CNS continues on inside your viscera. So 205 may not discuss it, 206 may not discuss it. Other than the skin, your central nervous system connects a whole lot with your enteric nervous system over here. So in your gut, in your gastrointestinal tract. If you have anxiety, you'd know this very well. Okay, what about commissural fibers? So commissural fibers, these are the connectors between the left and the right hemispheres. So there used to be a building there in UPCM, which is called the MSU. So miss you. So they miss each other so much, they're so clingy to each other. So commissural fibers. And then you have association fibers. So kung magkasama kayo sa isang asosasyon, you're all in the same place. So when we talk about association fibers, these are connectors within the same hemisphere, same cerebral hemisphere. So within right to right, left to left only. So by their powers combined, Captain Planet. So that's how they communicate. Okay, what about this one? So the most famous projection fiber and one of three major tracks that you will grasp here in neuroscience is the corticospinal tract. So those extremities, those muscles in the legs and arms that you were exposed to earlier were all controlled by neurons located here in the precentral gyrus. So from precentral gyrus to finger to toe, it has to travel a long way via very long axons. So from the beginning here in the precentral gyrus, the fibers will descend into this large collection of white matter, the so-called the semi-oval center or the centrum semi-ovale. So the arrows are not pointing in the right direction. They should be pointing downwards, but it just shows you the orientation. So they are spread out like this. So here from that same website, so this guy is so good, Dr. Aaron Cohen-Gadol, he made that neurosurgical atlas website. Well, at least it's attributed to him. This is the centrum semiovalis. The centrum semiovalis is everything above, just beneath the origins here in the cortex. So this is centrum semiovale. Okay, so on if you cut a brain coronally or you did an MRI coronally, that's the area here where there is nothing but gray and white matter. That's the centrum semiovale. So they will have characteristic appearance as you descend towards the brain stem. So that's centrum semiovale. So I just made it like this, so it looks like a semicircle, no? Not exactly semicircular here or oval. So if you cut the brain here, this is what you see. So just gray and white matter, nothing else. So that's the marker if you're looking at scans, CT scans or the MRIs. If you're lost and you're looking for the centrum semiovale, you just go straight to the top in the vertex and look where you see a lot of white matter like this. This is the CSO, the centrum semiovale. As you descend towards the CSF pathways, they will start to radiate. They look like a crown when you're looking at it from this at this level. So that part of the corticospinal tract, as it descends going towards the ventricles of the CSF pathways, since they have to arch over those chambers, they form crowning like fibers. So corona radiata, the radiating crown of white matter. So here from Dr. Gadel's website, you see this radiating fibers above the chambers of the CSF is the corona radiata. So it has to now traverse the basal ganglia here. So to squeeze itself in between those gray matter masses, it has to become the smallest version of itself. So that's what we call that's corona radiata, and the landmark here are the ventricular cavities. So if you're talking about the white matter here, that's corona radiata. So as they descend and become encapsulated by the basal ganglia, it forms the so-called internal capsule. So this area right here is very tiny, very compact. All the fibers for your arms, legs, and the face are all concentrated here. So that it just takes one tiny stroke here to paralyze your entire one side of your body. So here the corona radiata pierced through the basal ganglia here to form the internal capsule. So the internal capsule is inside here. So it sort of forms a boomerang. So if you're cutting the MRI here, that's where the internal capsule is. So very distinct when you look at it on an axial cut of a brain or on an MRI. So it looks like a boomerang. So it has if this is the knee, so that's the upper part and that's the lower part. So the anterior part of the limb and the posterior limb of the so-called internal capsule. And the knee, in the Latin for knee, is genu. So that's the genu here. So where the bend is. So anterior, the bend or genu, and then posterior limb of the internal capsule. And most of your motor fibers will pass through here. Okay, so boomerang. For me, it looks like a boomerang. Okay, so that's the internal capsule here. So centrum semiovale, corona radiata, internal capsule down here. So using diffusion tensor imaging, you can actually trace which ones are actually the motor tract or the corticospinal tract. So projection fibers on the DTI or diffusion tensor imaging are colored here in blue, meaning they're going downwards out of the brain. So from brain to spinal cord down here. So if it's the other color, it means it's on the way up. Okay, so CSO, corona radiata, internal capsule. Okay, same thing with this cuts from Nolte's book, centrum semiovale and corona radiata near the ventricles here. So corona radiata, you'll see you can see actually the lines radiating here until it becomes inserts itself in the gray matter here in the subcortical area to form the boomerang of the internal capsule. So anterior limb and posterior limb. Okay, so never mind this. This will be more important once we go back to them when we're talking about the clinical correlations of the cerebral cortex. Okay, so that is the example of the projection fiber, the corticospinal tract. Since it's that important, it's being mentioned as early as now. So you have other projection fibers. So by definition, projection fibers must go from the brain to outside the brain, or from outside the brain going into the brain. So these ones, which will be discussed by Dr. Baticolon, and the visual system travel from outside the brain, meaning from the eyes, and then go into the part of the brain concerned, and in this case, the visual cortex. Okay, so more on that later on. So just showing you here for reference and using diffusion tensor imaging just shows you the direction of flow. It's going into the brain instead of blue, which is going out of the brain. And the example for the commissural fibers, the most prominent one that we saw is the biggest one, the corpus callosum. So you get disconnected from yourself if you cut this. Okay, so corpus callosum. So on DTI, they use red as a way of labeling the commissural fiber. So those in red are traveling from hemisphere to hemisphere, as shown here. So corpus callosum red compared to blue and green projection fibers. Okay, and just like the internal capsule, it is on bended knee here in front. So that's the genu of the corpus callosum. Whereas a fatter portion, so this will be better illustrated when we go to the lab, differentiating the genu from the splenium. The splenium, since it has to connect your visual cortices together, your parietal and temporal cortices together for vision, it is quite thicker here compared to the genu over here. And everything in between is the body of the corpus callosum. Okay, and a smaller version of the corpus callosum, which connects the temporal lobes right and left, is the anterior commissure. So it's a blink and miss it structure unless the cuts of the brain are thin enough. But it helps you find an important structure which will be very relevant when you're talking about learning itself. Okay. So this is the anterior commissure. Where is the anterior commissure here? So I mentioned it's a blink or you miss it one, it's this one. So depending on how the brain was cut, you will completely miss out on the other side. So a symmetrically cut brain will show you this on both sides. So that's anterior commissure. Why is it important to me? Because of the structure underneath. This structure was previously called the structure without a name. So that's called substantia innominata, or the nameless substance at the base of the frontal lobe. But actually, everything that you need to learn and actually to remember everything that you learned is here. So we'll go into that when we talk about the brain plasticity towards the end of our module. That is the basal nucleus of Maynard. Okay, and just to complete the picture, the reason behind saying the cingulate gyrus is throws away everything you know about the brain's anatomy, because it runs from frontal to parietal to temporal. Okay. So using diffusion tensor imaging, contrasting that with the commissural fiber here of the corpus callosum, it travels green. What does this green mean? It means it's traveling from somewhere else going downwards, or blue going upwards going here. So it seems to be bidirectional. Okay, and the true look or appearance of that cingulate gyrus white matter is so extensive. So it actually connects all of your brain. So the importance of that cingulate gyrus, you can't wait to find out. We'll tell you more when we come back to this. So there are other fibers which may not be relevant to you as first-year medical students, but maybe in the future they'll be a lot more important when we're dealing with people who lose their memories or people who need to undergo surgery because of brain tumors. Okay, I'm just throwing this in here for those who are graduates of behavioral science or psychology. I do not know if they've revised what they've been teaching you about the arcuate fasciculus, which connects supposed to connect the Broca's area here in the speech area here with the Wernicke's area here in the temporal lobe. Okay. More modern studies show that it does not really connect the two areas, the Wernicke's and the Broca's area. So this is an old slide showing you what is not reflected in your textbooks. Okay, and we will show you another website which is very good. We only started at class 2025.